going to talk about the project, which is a novel screening and triage approach to detect cervical precancer using two tools. One is the HPV that we call extended genotyping, and I will tell you more about it, and an AI approach to evaluate the cervical images. The interest of me being here is because Epicenter, MSF, and MSF Foundation have been contributing to this project in many aspects, not only in the discussions, as well financially and with their human power in the field in Malawi, with a contribution of over 6,000 people in the overall project. So let me tell you about the cervix. We are talking about a very small part of the uterus that contributes to 90% of the cervical cancer cases. And it's at the end of the uterine cervix, of the uterus, sorry, and it's constituted with two different types of cells, squamous cell cells and glandular cells. And all these are shaking according to the physiological changes of the vagina and reproduction, and makes these cells very, very agile, very transforming. And this makes them extremely susceptible to HPV infection. It's a unique place in the human body that has such a high fidelity for HPV. So the cervix is cervical cancer, invasive aspects of this tumor is really a major public health problem. We have estimations about over 600,000 women would have this disease every year. As you can see in the maps, the dark blue it represents incidence, the dark red represents mortality. Half of the women that will have this disease will die due to this disease. And unfortunately, 80% of these deaths will occur in sub-Saharan Africa in low-resource settings. So we have a problem that is a very important inequity based on the geography where we live. And this is largely due to the activity and the prevention that we can do against this disease. So we know today that HPV is the cause of cervical cancer. We have thousands of studies that have demonstrated that. What is very interesting is that we have many, over 200 HPVs, but not all are responsible of cancer. And now the International Agency for Research on Cancer classifies 13 HPV types that are group 1 or 1B that can cause cancer. And these are really our target for HPV prevention. And here I have grouped them in different colors, and this is a very important concept for you to follow. The types are ranked based on the attribution that they contribute to invasive cervical cancer. For example, the number 1 in red is 16, contributes more than 60% of the cervical cancer. So if we remove this HPV 16, the incidence of this disease will be reduced by 60%. So then we go 1845, the second most common, which are very important for adenocarcinoma. Then we have the green group, which is an intermediate risk, and then which account for about 10% of all the cancers. And then we have the blue group. And I'm telling you because this is very important for you to understand what we are doing. The blue group are types that have been checked and that they are carcinogenic. But the chances that a woman infected by this type evolves into invasive cervical cancer is very, very low. So they contribute, you can see, less than 5% of the overall invasive cervical cancer. We have learned very, very well the natural history of the disease. We know that we acquire HPV infection in the red shape that you can see here soon after sexual initiation, and then the majority of us have a good immune system, good enough to really clear the infection, but they remain about 10–15%, depends on the setting, that will have this infection as a persistent one. Now we know that we can prevent the evolution of the infection by HPV vaccination, that it's all over the world now. About close to 40% of the girls before age 15 have received this vaccine, and this will prevent this curve. If we prevent this curve, then there will be no disease. But for the women that have not had the chances to have this vaccine, we have to go through a screening. And so while in France you will have 14 visits to get a screen all over your life, when we go in low-resource settings, we have the possibility to screen once or twice in a lifetime. So here is the drama, here is the inequity in health. So WHO is very concerned about that and launched a call for elimination of cervical cancer. This means to reduce really the new cases to a very low level so that it doesn't remain as a public health problem. The main pillars that they call for is 90% vaccination of girls before age 15, 70% of the women between 35–45 should have a screening test based on HPV, so it's very important that, and any woman that is detected to have a lesion or a cancer should be treated, so reaching 90%. So if we obtain this, and all the countries in WHO sign for this, by the year 2030, we would really get, at the end of the century, the elimination globally. Okay? So I go to the PAVE project. PAVE project is trying to really tackle the issues that we have in the absence of screening in low-resource settings. Less than 10% of the women in Africa have ever been screened. So we developed this approach, trying to make it more accessible. This project includes, first step, self-sampling screening. This means that the woman doesn't need to go through a gynecological exam, and with a brush gets her sample of the cervical cells. This approach allows us to test for HPV. And then we will test for HPV using these color blocks that I show you, which will allow us to really stratify the risk of having a precancerous lesion. If the woman is negative, the woman goes back home reassured. Negative predictive value is above 5 years. Those that they are positive, so we have the woman is HPV positive, then we call them and say, can you come to have a gynecological exam with a speculum? We take with a mobile colposcope, we take a picture, and this picture is read through an AI algorithm. Together, HPV and the image, we bring them together and we generate an algorithm that classifies women, let's say, put it very simply, in this traffic light approach. Red is going to be for the operational group to understand that a woman with a red will require an immediate treatment. Women with a yellow average risk will have to be followed up, and based on our capacity to treat, they will be second priority. The women in green, they can go home. So we try to avoid overtreatment, okay? And we, in the whole project, we provide thermal ablation, which is a very initial approach to treat, and we can treat about 60% of the cases that require treatment. The others will have to be referred. So the PAVE project included 50,000 women, 1,400 were living with HIV, 35,000 were sent back home, 13%, which is about 27%, were HPV positive, and we managed to include what we call the efficacy study, that were the 7,000 women that were HPV positive, and we had full data. Full data means We had a good image that we could evaluate, and we had an histology assessment. Every woman had to have an histology because this is a validation project, and we require confirmation that our strategy was working. So as you can see here, the sites that included in the project were Cambodia, Brazil, El Salvador, Honduras, Dominican Republic, Nigeria, Tanzania, Malawi, and Eswatini. The AI during the project was run in Colorado in the US. We were sending these images online, uploading them. Now we can do that inside, and Malawi has been running a project to make sure that we can run this evaluation through the AI with a small mobile colposcope. So here is the results of the overall project, okay? So you can see here in this table, I show the percentage of women in which we detected a precancerous lesion. Precancerous, I mean CIN3, which is the very best precursor lesion prior to evolve to invasive cervical cancer. And the overall background for women overall that were positive was 7%. And you can see in the first two pillars, in blue, HPV 16 positive, the initial risk was 15 if the woman was HIV negative, and it reached to 25% if she was living with HIV. And you can see that in all, the green bars are always higher because it represents women living with HIV. They have always more infection than HIV negative women. And what is important is that this shows the first step. In the first step, we are already able to go from 7% to identify women that have a 25% risk, for example. Then, I think I didn't have the most updated version, but okay, sorry about that, because we had included here another slide in which we show what happens when we take the image. The image of the cervix can be classified in 3 groups: normal, indeterminate, or severe. And it's the severe that we consider it's a marker of disease. When we add the severity of the image together with the HPV information, we can really grade the risk. As you can see, we were talking before about 20%, now we are over 35% in the red bar. What is important is that if a woman has an HPV 16, it doesn't even matter even what happens with the image, because this woman has such a high risk that we need to manage her. But the group that I was showing before, the blue and the green, they have, the image evaluation has an added value. For example, a woman with an HPV 31, if she has a severe image, or an HPV 39, which is a very low risk, has an image that's categorized as severe, the risk immediately goes up. So this allows us to really bring into the field a screen and triage approach that is of very high quality. And I always say, I would be happy to be screened with this approach, okay? So it gives us this green group that as well can be reassured, can go back home, and we concentrate our operational activity into those women that need to be treated. So in summary, based on our PAVE work, we had categorized as immediate need for treatment 57% of the women that were HPV positive. 22% remained like, do as much as you can according to your ability. And then 21% can be sent home with a good safety. Doing this approach, and by managing the red and the yellow, we target 98% of the cancers, and precancers and cancer. 2% are missed, which are in this green. There is no another screening test that what we are doing here that in one visit can reach this approach, okay? So to summarize, very briefly, the PAVE strategy highlights that HPV and AV can provide a good risk stratification of precancerous lesions, And PAVE aims to support clinical management. When we have it implemented, it will be a very good aid for the operations on how to really do the best for those women that they are more in need. And I want to thank my colleagues. This is a big consortium, a very good thanks to MSF Foundation as well for supporting part of our job. Thank you very much.